Before we begin, I want to take a moment to honor the cultures behind the stories we are about to explore. The tales shared here come from many peoples, lands, and traditions. I do not change these stories to fit modern expectations or to align with today's social standards. Instead, I present them as they were told, sometimes beautiful, sometimes harsh, sometimes challenging. We are not here to judge the past, but to understand it, to listen, to learn, and to honor the ancestors who carried these stories forward. We also share stories from various religious traditions. These are presented in their historical and spiritual context, with respect for their beliefs that they represent. Every culture deserves respect, context, and acknowledgement, and this space is dedicated to doing exactly that. Story 1. Dionysus, the vine that survived fire. In the sun-drenched hills of ancient Greece, where vines coil around stone and soil like living memory, there grows a story of birth unlike any other, a story that carries both destruction and renewal in the same breath. It is the story of Dionysus, god of wine, ecstasy, and sacred transformation, whose arrival into the world reveals that what is harvested is not merely what grows easily, but what survives, adapts, and returns stronger after rupture. Before Dionysus could be born, his story was already marked by tension. His mother, Semele, was a mortal woman loved by Zeus, but Hera, ever watchful and often unforgiving, sought to undo what had been created. Disguising herself, she convinced Semele to ask Zeus to reveal himself in his divine form, something no mortal body could withstand. When Zeus appeared in his true radiance, lightning and fire filled the space, and Semele was consumed. Yet even within this destruction, life had already taken root. From the ashes of Semele, Zeus rescued the unborn Dionysus, an act that did not undo what had happened, but refused to let it be the end. In a gesture that is both strange and deeply symbolic, Zeus sewed the child into his own thigh, carrying him there until the time came for him to be born again. A second gestation is not hidden, not quiet, but carried within the body of a god, a continuation of life in an unexpected place. Dionysus is often called twice born, and within that title is a profound truth. Some forms of life do not emerge in a single, uninterrupted movement. They are interrupted, reshaped, carried through fire, and brought forth again. His birth is not only an arrival, but a reemergence, a continuation that refuses to be extinguished. When Dionysus finally enters the world, he is not fragile in spirit, though he must be hidden for a time, raised in secret among nymphs and wild places to protect him from Hera's lingering anger. He grows with a nature that reflects both his origins and his destiny. He is connected to the vine, to the grape that must be crushed to become wine, to the transformation that occurs when something is broken down and reformed into something richer. This connection is not accidental. The vine itself mirrors Dionysus' story. It grows slowly, winding through seasons, enduring heat, drought, and pruning. Its fruit, when harvested, is not consumed in its raw form alone, but transformed through fermentation into wine, something that alters perception, softens boundaries, and invites a different kind of awareness. In this way, Dionysus becomes a god not only of celebration, but of change, of the processes that take what is raw and make it something new. There is also a deeper layer to his presence. Dionysus does not represent excess without meaning, but the breaking of rigid structures that no longer allow life to flow. His festivals, filled with music, dance, and communal experience, create spaces where individuals step outside of their fixed roles, where identity loosens and something more fluid can emerge. This is not chaos for its own sake, but a form of renewal, a reminder that life cannot remain static and still thrive. His birth, then, becomes the foundation of his nature. Having passed through destruction and reformation, Dionysus carries within him the understanding that what is gathered, what is harvested, is not only the result of growth, but of endurance. The grape that becomes wine has known pressure. The god who embodies it has known fire. For the Greeks, Dionysus' presence was both revered and feared, not because he brought harm, but because he revealed truth. The truth that life includes transformation, that joy can arise from what has been broken, that what we gather at the end of a cycle is shaped by everything that came before it. His festivals marked the harvest not just of a time of collection, but as a time of release, of gratitude, of stepping into the fullness of what had been created. Thus, the story of Dionysus stands as a reflection of harvest as transformation, of gathering not only what has grown easily, but what has endured, what has changed, what has become something more than it once was. It reminds that what we receive is often shaped by unseen processes, by moments of loss, by acts of resilience that allowed something to continue. In every transformation where what was once raw becomes something refined. In every harvest that carries both effort and reward, there is Dionysus, a reminder that reaping is not only about taking what is present, but honoring the journey that made it so. Story 2, Ceres, the grain that returns after loss. In the fertile lands of ancient Rome, where fields stretched in golden waves beneath a steady sun, there lived Ceres, goddess of grain nourishment, in the quiet endurance that allows life to continue through cycles of loss and return. Her presence was not loud but constant, woven into every harvest, every loaf of bread, every moment where the earth offered its sustenance back to those who tended it. Through her, the act of gathering was never merely practical but sacred, a recognition that what is received has been grown through time, care, and patience. Ceres, like her Greek counterpart Demeter, is deeply connected to her daughter, Proserpina. When Proserpina was taken into the underworld by Pluto, the world did not simply continue unchanged. Ceres felt the absence immediately, not only as a mother, but as a force that sustains growth. Her grief was not contained within her, but moved outward, affecting the land itself. Fields once rich with grain became barren, crops ceased to grow, and the rhythm of nourishment was interrupted. This disruption reveals a deeper truth within her story, that harvest cannot exist without balance, that what is gathered is dependent on conditions that must be maintained. When connection is broken, when care is withdrawn, the cycle falters. Ceres' grief becomes a mirror for the land, showing that what is nurtured must also be protected, that the process of growth requires continuity. Her search for Proserpina was not rushed. She wandered across the world, carrying both sorrow and determination, refusing to return to her role until what had been lost was acknowledged. In this time, humanity experienced the absence of abundance, learning not through instruction but through lack. What it means to live without the steady presence of nourishment. The earth itself became a teacher, its barrenness reflecting the cost of imbalance. When an agreement was finally reached, allowing her daughter to return for part of the year, the world did not simply revert to what it had been. Instead, a cycle was established. There would be seasons of growth and seasons of rest, times when the land would flourish and times when it would lie still. Ceres' role shifted from constant provider to guardian of rhythm, ensuring that the cycle would continue, that what was lost could return, but also that rest would be honored. This cyclical understanding is central to the Roman relationship with harvest. Gathering is not a singular event, but part of an ongoing process. The grain that is reaped is not the end, but the continuation, seeds saved for planting, fields prepared for the next cycle. What is received must also be returned in some form, whether through care of the land, through ritual, or through the acknowledgement of what has been given. Festivals dedicated to Ceres, such as Ceralia, were not only celebrations of abundance, but acts of gratitude and renewal. Offerings were made, games were held, and the community gathered to recognize the importance of the harvest, not as something guaranteed, but as something earned through alignment with the natural order. These festivals reinforce the understanding that what is gathered is a result of both human effort and forces beyond human control. There is also a gentleness within Ceres' story, a patience that allows for the unfolding of cycles without forcing them. She does not demand constant growth, but honors the necessity of rest. This balance is essential, for without it, the land would be depleted, the cycle broken. In this, her presence teaches that abundance is not sustained through intensity, but through care, through the willingness to allow process to complete in their own time. The grain itself becomes a symbol of this understanding. It must be planted, tended, harvested, and then processed, each step requiring attention and effort. Yet once gathered, it becomes nourishment, something that sustains life beyond the moment of harvest. The act of eating grain is not an act of receiving the entire cycle, taking in not just the final product, but the time, the labor, the conditions that made it possible. Thus, the story of Ceres stands as a reflection of harvest's continuation, of gathering as part of a cycle that includes loss, return, effort, and rest. It reminds that what we receive is shaped by what has come before, that abundance is not static but dynamic, moving through phases that must be honored. In each harvest, whether of food, effort, or experience, there is the same pattern. There is preparation, growth, interruption, return, and gathering. And within that pattern, there is the understanding that what is received is not only the result of what we have done, but the cycles we have moved through. Story 3: The Yam Festival. Gathering what the earth has remembered. In the warm red soiled lands of West Africa, where rain and sun move in careful rhythm and the earth breathes through cycle of abundance, there comes a time each year when the people pause before gathering what has grown. This is the time of the Yam Festival, known among the Igbo as Iriji, the New Yam Festival, a sacred moment where harvest is not rushed but honored, not consumed immediately, but first acknowledged as a gift that has passed through time, effort, and unseen forces before arriving in human hands. Before the first yam is eaten, there is waiting. Yams, unlike other crops, do not reveal themselves easily. They grow beneath the soil, hidden, swelling slowly over months, fed by rain, tended by hands that must trust what they cannot see. The farmer plants, waters, weeds, and returns again and again to the same patch of land, not to pull up proof, but to care for possibility. This patience becomes part of the harvest itself, woven into the final act of gathering. When the time of harvest arrives, no one begins immediately. First yam cannot be eaten until it has been offered, until gratitude has been spoken. Chiefs, elders, and spiritual leaders perform rituals, giving thanks to the earth, to the ancestors, to the forces that allowed the crops to grow. This offering is not symbolic alone, but necessary, an acknowledgement that what has been produced is not solely the result of human effort, but of relationship between people, land, and spirit. Only after this offering is made does the harvest truly begin. The yams are brought forward, large, heavy, coated in the red dust of the soil from which they came. They are not treated casually, but with respect, handled as something that has completed a long journey. Cooking begins, often roasting or boiling, and the first bites are taken slowly with awareness. The taste is not just flavor, but memory, the months of care, the labor of planting, the waiting through uncertain weather, all culminating in this moment of receiving. The festival then unfolds into celebration. There is music, drumming that echoes through the body like a second heartbeat, dances that move in patterns reflecting the cycles of planting and harvest, and communal meals where food is shared, not hoarded. The abundance is not measured by how much one individual possesses, but by how much can be shared among many. In this, the harvest becomes not just a gathering of food, but a gathering of people, of connection, of life recognizing itself in others. There is also competition and display, farmers presenting their largest yams, not as act of pride alone, but as recognition of dedication, of skill, of alignment with the land. Yet even here the tone is not of domination, but of celebration, of honoring what has been achieved through care rather than force. The yams themselves hold deep symbolic meaning, as a staple crop that represents sustenance, continuity, and stability. But more than that, it represents what grows beneath the surface, what develops unseen. Its hidden nature mirrors many processes in life, efforts that do not show immediate results, growth that occurs quietly, beneath attention until the moment of emergence arrives. The festival teaches that harvest is not simply about taking, but about timing, about knowing when something is ready, when it has completed its cycle. To harvest too early is to interrupt the process. To wait too long is to risk loss. There is a balance, a listening required, an awareness of rhythm that cannot be forced. There is also a recognition that what is gathered carries responsibility. The new yam is not just eaten, but marks the beginning of a new cycle. Seeds are saved, land is prepared, and the process begins again. The harvest is both an ending and a beginning, a moment where what has been received becomes a foundation for what will come next. For those who participate, the festival becomes a lived understanding of abundance, not as accumulation, but as relationship. It is not enough that the yam is grown. It has been honored, shared, and integrated into the life of the community. Only then does the harvest fulfill its purpose. Thus, the Yam Festival stands as a reflection of gathering as a sacred act, of receiving as something that requires awareness, gratitude, and care. It reminds that what we harvest is shaped not only by what we do, but by how we relate, to the land, to each other, to the processes that sustain life. In every effort that takes time to show results, in every moment where patience leads to fruition, in every gathering where what is received is shared and honored, there is a spirit of this festival, a reminder that abundance is not just what we collect, but what we recognize, what we respect, and what we allow to continue. Story 4, Chuseok, the harvest of memory and return. In the rolling landscapes of Korea, where mountains fold into valleys and rice fields shimmer like mirrors under the autumn sun, there comes a time each year when the harvest is not only gathered from the land, but from memory, from lineage, from the quiet threads that bind past and present together. This is Chuseok, the Korean Harvest Festival, a time when abundance is not measured solely by what is collected, but by what is remembered, honored, and shared across generations. Chuseok arrives with the full moon of early autumn, a symbol of completeness, of cycles fulfilled, of light that has reached its fullness before beginning its gentle decline. The moon is not simply observed, but felt as a presence, a witness to the cycles of planting and reaping, of effort and reward. Under its light, families gather, often traveling long distances to return to their ancestral homes, carrying with them not just food, but intention. Before the feast begins, there is a pause. This pause is for Cha Rae, an ancestral ritual where food is prepared and offered to those who came before. Tables are arranged with precision, fruits, rice, fish, and specially prepared dishes placed in careful order. Among them is Sang Payaun, a half-moon-shaped rice cake filled with sesame, red bean, or chestnut, steamed over pine needles, which infuse it with a subtle fragrance of earth and forest. These foods are not consumed immediately, but first presented, acknowledge that what has been harvested is not only for the living, but part of a lineage that continues through time. In this act, the harvest becomes more than sustenance. It becomes connection, a recognition that what is received today is built upon the efforts, knowledge, and lives of those who came before. The land has been tended across generations, and each harvest carries a history within it. To eat without acknowledging this would be to break that thread. To offer first is to keep it intact. After the ritual, the meal is shared, and the atmosphere shifts from reverence to celebration. Laughter fills the space, stories are told, and the act of eating becomes communal, not hurried, but experienced. Each dish carries meaning, not only in its ingredients, but in its preparation, often made together, passed down through hands that had learned from those before them. There is also movement, traditional dances, such as Gengang Sule, where women join hands in a circle under the full moon, moving together in rhythm. Their steps simple yet intentional. The circle itself becomes a symbol of continuity, of unity, of cycles that repeat and renew. The dance is not performance, but participation, a physical expression of connection to each other, to the land, to the moment. Chuseok is also a time for visiting ancestral graves, a practice known as Sangmyo. Families clean the sites, remove overgrowth, and offer food and drink, maintaining the spaces where memory resides. This act reflects a deep respect for continuity, for the understanding that life does not exist in isolation, but is part of an ongoing story. The harvest, then, is not only what is gathered from the earth, but what is carried forward from those who have lived before. There is a gentleness to this festival, a rhythm that does not rush from one act to another, but also allows each moment to unfold fully. The gathering, the offering, the sharing, the remembering, each is given space. This reflects a deeper lesson within Chuseok that abundance is not only about quantity, but about presence, about the ability to receive what has been given with awareness and gratitude. The rice fields themselves mirror this understanding. They are planted with care, tended through changing season, and harvested when the time is right. The grain, once gathered, becomes part of daily life. Yet during Chuseok, it is elevated, recognized not as ordinary, but as the result of a cycle that deserves acknowledgement. This shift in perspective transforms the act of eating into something meaningful, something connected to a larger pattern. Thus, Chuseok stands as a reflection of harvest as remembrance, of gathering as an act that includes not only the present, but the past and the future. This reminds that what we receive is not solely ours, but part of a continuum, something to be honored, shared, and carried forward. Every moment where we pause before receiving, where we acknowledge the sources of what we have, where we share what is gathered with others. There is the essence of Chusat, reminder that abundance is not only in what fills our hands, but in what connects us across time, across space, across the quiet, enduring rhythm of life itself. Daily Thread for May 22nd. What you gather carries the story of how it grew. Abundance is shaped by patience and trust. Not all harvest is visible until the moment arrives. Receive what has come with gratitude. What is shared becomes more than what is kept. Cycles complete and begin again quietly. Honor both the effort and the offering. You are living within the harvest you have planted.